I'm back with not one, not two, but 3 gaming budget builds. After more than a year of crazy GPU prices, it has finally stabilized to a reasonable price, and budget builds are back. The beauty of a custom PC build is that you can customize your PC to your own liking with tons of choices. But it's a double-edged sword. Because there are so many options from CPU, GPU, ASRock, ASUS, MSI, so many choices you can get lost in it. So if you're new to PC building or just unsure what PC components to get, I recommend you watch this video entirely. This will give you a better perspective of what PC components you can get for your next build. To start things off, these are the components you need to have a successful PC build. Even though there's a GPU in there, if you want a PC that's not for gaming or light gaming, you actually don't need a GPU. Intel CPU integrated graphics or AMD's APU would replace the GPU. But I'll get into that in the builds later. The 3 builds that I'm going to build are categorized as the bare minimum without GPU at about $700, the bare minimum with GPU about $900, and the last build I got $1,400 and I want to future-proof a bit here and there build. Yeah, that's the name of the build. So let's get started with the first build, the bare minimum without a GPU. So we start off with the CPU, actually the APU, Accelerated Processing Unit. An APU consists of both CPU and GPU cores on a single die. The AMD Ryzen 5 5600G is hands down the better APU compared to Intel CPU integrated graphics. Next, I went with the Deskmini X300. This is a small case with a motherboard and power all in one box. One bad thing is that you won't be able to add a GPU in the future without buying a new motherboard, case, and power supply. But don't worry, I will let you know what to get if you want to add a GPU in the future later. For RAM, the Deskmini X300 uses laptop memory, making it even harder for any upgradability in the future. Last but not least, the storage 512 NVMe SSD by Lexar. By far, this is the simplest build I have ever built, except for the CPU cooler. So I'm using the AMD CPU cooler and I had to take out the top part of the CPU cooler. Even after removing the top cover, it was a very tight fit and I had to put a little bit of force to widen the opening of this case. But so far, no problem. CPU temperatures are normal and this is like the simplest build I have ever done. No cable management needed at all. So I played a few games, competitive games, AAA games. Let's go for the good news first, okay? Good news is Valorant, CSGO, Dota, League of Legends, no problem. I haven't played a competitive game of Valorant. Not say I play 100%, but I was useful lah. The only exception for the 4 games that I mentioned is CSGO. CSGO is a little bit more demanding and I did get a bit motion sickness because of the low FPS. But other than that, it's not a bad experience. Bad news is for people that want to play AAA games, I played Shadow of the Tomb Raider and Dying Light 2. Shadow of the Tomb Raider still okay because it's an old game, but for like a new Dying Light 2 AAA game, it was hard. I was surprised it can actually run the game because it did say I didn't meet the minimum requirements to play the game or even run the game, but the experience is bad. 30 frames per second, it looks like a potato, especially for a game like Dying Light 2 where the scenery, the graphics is amazing. Not the best experience. Actually no, horrible experience. But you know what, if you don't really care about AAA games, you want to just play Valorant, you want it in a cheap, small form factor, then this is for you. I mean, it is a freaking PC. You can still watch Netflix, Disney Plus, naughty videos. I don't judge. You can do whatever you want with the PC. You can do work, you can open documents, you can open PowerPoints, Excel sheets. So I do see a group of people that will want this. However, if you're a gamer and this is what you can afford for now, and maybe in the future you want to add a GPU, then listen here. Don't get the Deskmini. Instead, replace the Deskmini with an actual motherboard, PSU, and a case. So for the motherboard, you can get a B550 ASRock Phantom Gaming 4, which is what we're going to use later. For PSU, you can get a 550 watt 80 plus bronze, very affordable. The maximum GPU you can get is a RTX 3060 Ti or AMD's RX 6600 XT. If you want an RTX 3070 or higher, then you will need a PSU with more wattage. And for case, you can get like a simple $50 case. A few brands in Singapore that are cheap is Techwear or Deepcool. Affordable and
good enough lah, basically. This PC, very surprising. First time using the 5600G, very impressive. And we go on to the next build.
The bare minimum with GPU at $900-ish. I do believe that this is a very appealing build for budget builders. Let's start with the CPU. The clear winner for this price range is the Intel i3-12100F. It only has 4 cores, but the single core performance blows the AMD 3600 out of the water. For the motherboard, I went for the ASRock H610M HDV M.2 DDR4 motherboard, because getting B660 or Z690 would just be a waste of money. It's like getting a Ferrari body but a Prius engine. Anyway, reminder triangle on the CPU to the triangle of the CPU socket. For the CPU cooler, I just went with the stock cooler. Intel stock coolers are pretty easy to add in and install. It already has thermal paste, so just add pressure on all 4 corners to lock it in. For RAM, I went with Klevv DDR4 3200MHz 2x8GB. No point getting higher speeds as there is no memory overclock for the H610 motherboard. Storage is the same as the first build, the Lexar 512GB NVMe SSD. For the case, I went with the Deepcool Mattrex 40. For $45 online, it comes with a single fan, so cost saving. For the GPU, I got the ASRock RX 6500 XT. The performance is very similar to the GTX 1660, but at a lower price of $350. Lastly, for the PSU, the FSP HD 420. It's just an affordable PSU for this price range. It might not be the best, but it is reliable enough. It has 3 years warranty and is enough to power the 6500 XT. So this build was very easy, no extra cables, so cable management was very easy. And it's just no bullshit, no RGB. Legit, there is no RGB in there. Anyway, if you want to learn how to build a PC, I did a video on how to build a PC in the past, and I'll be doing an updated version for 2022 as well, so do stay tuned for that. So this PC will definitely run games a lot better than the PC without the GPU. Right here. You'll be able to play competitive games at max settings. For Valorant, it's like 300 frames per second at 1080p lah, but still 300 frames per second. And you can play AAA games at low to medium settings depending on whether you want better looking game or more FPS. So for example, for Dying Light 2, this is at low settings and you get about 90 to 120 FPS. So not too bad actually, the experience is good. It doesn't look the best compared to my RTX 3090. It's a bit dark in this gameplay, but yeah, there's a clip of me going through this in the morning. Looks okay lah. Okay, but you know what, comparing to the PC without the GPU, this is a very good experience. I won't say that this PC is like the cheapest PC you can get, because if you bring second-hand components in, then that can be the cheapest. But in terms of new component with the latest 12th gen CPU and RX 6500 XT, this is, I think, the cheapest you can go and still have a good experience gaming. So upside for this build is that it's very affordable. Downside for this build is upgradability. You can't really upgrade without upgrading something else. So if, for example, you want to upgrade a GPU, then you need to upgrade your PSU. So do bear this in mind. If you want a better GPU in the future, maybe get a good PSU now. It's really up to you. Okay, but you know what? If you want no bullshit, good build to have. This leads us to the next build. I got 1400 and I want to future-proof here and there build. For the CPU, this is a close fight between Intel's i5-12400F and AMD's Ryzen 5 5600X. Even though the 12400F is cheaper, when adding the motherboard price in with the CPUs, the prices are similar. I ended up choosing the 5600X with a B550 motherboard because of the overclocking capabilities. But if overclocking is something you don't really care about, feel free to go Intel's option. Depending on what you play, Intel might be a better option for you. But I believe majority of the people will see more value in AMD's 5600X. For the motherboard, I went with ASRock B550 Phantom Gaming 4. Just a simple B550 board for $150. With this motherboard, you have more room for upgradability like more RAM or PCIe Gen 4. AMD stock cooler for now, something you can upgrade in the future if you want to when you are ready to overclock your CPU. RAM, I went with Klevv 3600MHz
x 8GB because the B550 has memory overclocking capabilities. Storage, the same as the other two builds, Lexar 512GB NVMe SSD, but with the B550 Gen 4 NVMe SSDs are an option for you for future upgrades. For the case, let's spend a bit more on aesthetics. I went with the Dark Flash DLM21, costing about $70, with TechWest Orbis fan LED and hub set that only cost $30. Should I have gone for a better CPU cooler than RGB? Probably. But hear me out, if you're going to overclock your CPU, I recommend you go all out with a big CPU cooler like a Be Quiet cooler or an AIO cooler. So instead of buying a CPU cooler, then upgrading it, why not just save the money first? Then when you're ready to overclock your CPU, then you buy the CPU cooler. PSU, I went with the FSP 550W 80 Plus Bronze, also with 3 years warranty. And last but not least, the GPU will be the Zotac RTX 3050 Twin Edge, priced at $550. It's 50% better performance than RX 6500 XT, and you will be able to use DLSS, which is basically free FPS for games that have it. So this build can be a bit messy cable management wise because of the extra fans, LED, and the hub. And you know what, here's the thing about cable management, you don't need to be like OCD neat like you see in a lot of the pictures. I think for cable management at the back, especially because it's covered, is that it's good enough that it's not tangled around and good enough that you can cover the side panels easily. I believe this price range of $1,400 to $1,500 is a good sweet spot for majority of Singaporeans that want to game. You can play competitive games like Valorant at 400 FPS, even more FPS. And it's not just because of the better GPU, but because you have a better CPU. And games like Valorant and CSGO are CPU intensive. And because you're using NVIDIA's RTX card, the RTX 3050, you can use things like DLSS. So at the moment, I'm playing Dying Light 2 at its high settings with DLSS, and I'm getting an average frame rate of 60 frames per second. It looks pretty good, I must say. You get good FPS, you get good scenery, it's a good balance for AAA games. At this price range, having the RTX 3050, you still can't play games at ray tracing. But honestly, personally, even with a RTX 3080 or 3090, I don't really like turning on ray tracing because I rather have more frames per second than having better shadows and lighting. Unless it's Minecraft. Minecraft is a good experience with ray tracing. So just to recap the first build, bare minimum without GPU, you can play competitive games or indie games at very low settings, and you can barely play AAA games. Upgradability will depend if you get the Deskmini X300 or you get a regular motherboard case and power supply. For the second build, is the bare minimum with GPU. You'll be able to play competitive games and indie games at high setting, at 1080p resolution, and low to medium settings for AAA games. And there's very minimal upgradability. Last build, I have 1400 and I want to upgrade future-proof here and there. Build, you'll be able to play competitive games at higher FPS than the second build. You'll be able to play AAA games at mid to high settings, depending if you want it to look better or have higher FPS. Especially with DLSS, your experience with AAA games will be a lot better. And lastly, you have good upgradability options, from adding more RAM to replacing NVMe SSD to Gen 4 to CPU cooler, better CPU, or even a better GPU. I'll put up some benchmarks so that you can compare. And honestly, it's not me to tell you which build is better for which, because it's all depending on your price range. You know, like when I was younger, I was only able to afford a PC like this, then I can upgrade slowly, you know, that kind of thing. So it really depends on your needs and your situation. So if you're gonna build your own PC very soon, I'm interested to find out what PC components you choose. So do comment in the comment section below. Yeah. So like I said in the start, the beauty of building your own PC is the customization. Need more storage? Buy a hard drive. Video editing maybe? Better CPU. You want your PC to look different? Buy a different case. There's just so many options for you to choose from. So I hope this video is useful for you for your next PC build. If you have any questions, do leave your questions in the comment section below. And other than that, I'll see you next week. I'm back and I am done.